In this episode, we have a beautiful conversation about falling in love with life. What does it mean to fall in love with life? And how can we see beyond our limited thinking to find joy and happiness that is not circumstantial? We share with you how falling in love with life may be simpler than you think. Thank you for joining us to find out more about the 3 principles and the transformations that occur when we explore this new paradigm in mental health and well-being.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm very great. How are you, Miles?
Very good.
I just want to check. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely. I'm so happy.
Oh my goodness. Me too. Me too.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Mugsy.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How are you guys?
Really good. Yeah, very, very good. Actually, looking forward to this very much after last week, continuing our conversation. And yeah, I've had a lovely day. How about you, Mugsy?
I'm good. I'm just trying to settle back from being on a little holiday as you guys would.
Yes. Did you have a nice time?
I did, but you always need a holiday after a holiday.
Yeah.
You need like 1 or 2 days to recoup from the holiday itself.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I didn't like my last holiday, so yeah, I'm really happy to be at home now.
You didn't.
I know. Oh, Jem, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really well. I was just sort of giggling to myself when you were explaining about the holiday, because it's so funny how, like, you were so excited to go and then it didn't turn out to be how expected. And it's just the absolute epitome of what we talk about here, really, isn't it?
It really is.
And Muggsy, it depends on what kind of holiday you've had. If you need a holiday from a holiday, I don't know what you got up to, but you know. And it is episode 31, and I just want to. I always find it's important now to say that, because we've come such a long way, and last week was such a beautiful conversation about love, and yeah, I can't wait to continue it with everybody here. So thank you for everyone for listening. And I think we're going to have a really open space. We never really have a plan, but tonight we're just gonna shoot the SH and see where we go.
My initials are in real life at SH. You're not going to shoot me, are you?
Never. Never. You brought me back to life. I can't live without you now.
Oh, God. Oh, dear. Right, I think we've got quite a few in now, so we can get going. So, yeah, again, welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Some of our regulars are here, which is wonderful to see you all, and some new people too. And what we do here is we spend an hour just taking a deeper dive into what the human experience really is, what comes before this idea of who we think we are, this idea of what we think life should be like. Last week we touched on heartbreak, and we're kind of continuing with that this week, and we're going a little bit more into falling in love with life. So yeah, again, thank you for joining us. We hope that you feel more relaxed after you spend this hour with us. I'd like to ask you to slow down if you can. Just leave everything that you're carrying at the door. Just kind of lift that weight of all those things that look like problems, and just if you can let them go for this hour. You don't need to hold them while you're with us. And they may even look a little bit different after we've finished our conversation. So again, I always say every week, listen like you're listening to music. Don't try and analyse this. Listen to it as if you just want it to wash over you. You don't want to get caught up in your mind about what we're saying or what we're talking about. It's almost like you want to absorb it, like osmosis. We just want you to feel a little bit different by the time that you get off the call. And there is a wonderful quote as well about listening to the words, and it is, "The words are no more than signposts. That to which they point is not to be found within the realm of thought. but a dimension within yourself that is deeper and infinitely vaster than thought. A vibrantly alive peace is one of the characteristics of that dimension. So whether you feel inner peace arising as you listen, this is the work that is fulfilling its function as your teacher. It is the words and what is beyond them reminding you of who you are and pointing you home. So this is the whole point of what we're doing here, is this pointing home. And if you're not aware of our work and this is your first listen to Unminding, please go to our podcast and listen to some older episodes where we really talk about what the principles that we cover really are. We go a bit deeper into them, and they cover all aspects of life, because they are all aspects of life. And if you go back, I think What is Thought is the first episode that you can really get an understanding of what we're pointing to here. But you'll still get a good idea just from listening, because, what we're always pointing to is that the experience that it looks like you're having that's coming from the world is actually coming from you. And everything comes back to that. So, as I said, last week we spoke about heartbreak. And I know at those times, and if any of you are on here because, that's what you're going through, I know it can feel like, you'll never be okay. Those feelings they're very consuming. They tear at us, they strip us away. But that stripping away is revealing something new and something fresh. It always reveals a new sight, and it gives us a new life. And really, in truth, it could never be any other way than it is. Life is love, and love is sometimes loss. And, we really did go into that last week, and how this heartbreak can really trigger this fear of survival, and it brings up so many issues within us. But once they're seen, once they're revealed, we can actually go through them and come out the other side fresher with insights. And I think today what we're going to talk a little bit more about is that other side, that falling in love with life again, that seeing through the illusion of what looked like it was permanent but wasn't, and coming into this space of seeing that everything is temporary, everything is transient, life is full of change. And there's a lovely quote, and it is, "Some beautiful paths can't be discovered without getting lost." And I just think, that's us too. The paths within us, our lives, we have to get lost to be rediscovered. We may think it's always supposed to work out the way that we want it to, but it never does. Obviously it does sometimes, but often it doesn't. And it doesn't because it's not meant to, that we have paths to forge, that we have experiences that we're meant to have, that we have learnings that are meant to find us. And often what we learn, what we're taught, comes through pain and comes through suffering. I don't know why it has to be that way. I mean, maybe we wouldn't learn unless it was through those dark times, through those cracks, those cracks in our ego that come when we go through bad times in life. So I guess for me, how I see it is that those experiences were always meant to be, because those experiences always take us deeper into who we really are. They get us to reflect. When everything's going great, we don't, of course we always want it to be like that, but we don't go within, we don't reflect, we don't do any work on ourselves, we don't begin to kind of inquire into who we really are, because we're just out there. But those times when life does contract, when it does get dark, they're the times when we go within, they're the times when we question, and they're the times when this inquiry can really kind of come into its own. So falling in love with life is such a beautiful subject. It's got such a richness. Life has such richness. And when we talk about falling in love with life, we're not talking about falling in love with life just when it's good. We're talking about falling in love with life and all of it. I had a message from a client earlier, and they were saying that they're going through a kind of a tough time, and they were saying, they were actually on holiday, and they were saying, "Oh, but I'm kind of having a nice time, but I'm really sad." And I was like, it's funny how they can coexist, because there's something in when you begin to see what we teach here is that there can be sadness, there can be difficult times in life, but the feeling isn't a constant. You can still have a nice time and with moments of sadness. You can still have a good life with understanding that you're going to experience the grief, the loss, the heartbreak, the anger, all of the things that come with it. That doesn't necessarily mean that life isn't rich. There's something to be gained from all of life. So we stop splitting up experience, okay? So I think when you begin to understand these principles and we start to begin to see before our own thinking and we see our experience from a deeper level, instead of that duality that we're used to, good and bad, positive and negative, and we constantly kind of have a box. Well, that was a good experience, that was a bad experience, and we're putting everything in its right boxes and labeling it, and suddenly we come to an understanding that shows us a different way of seeing life, seeing ourselves and seeing the world. And that labeling can fall away quite dramatically, and it just becomes, oh, this is experience, this is what's on the table for me right now. This is what's supposed to be happening. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about falling in love with life, because we're not analysing it all the time. We're not in review of life all the time. We're kind of accepting the experience that we're in. And that acceptance of the experience allows us to navigate the challenges with much more grace and ease. And it also allows us to have those times of, even in the challenging times, have an experience of peace, have an experience of well-being, because we're seeing it just from a deeper space than good and bad or wrong or right. It's just a shift in consciousness. It's a shift in the understanding of you. This is why we have these conversations. It's not just because it's a nice conversation. This will make a profound difference to your life. You know, listen to the podcasts, you know, work with someone like me, you know, explore what this is. Because when you do, suddenly it's like, oh, I don't have to live my life in the way that I've always lived it. I can live it in a state of knowing that at any given moment I can have a really deep, rich experience of being completely in love with life, no matter my circumstances. That's the difference here. No matter my circumstances. Because before it was always circumstantial. Yeah. And that's, to me, that's what we're here. That's what we're here to have. We're here to learn how to love. And I'm not talking romantic love when we're talking about this today. I'm talking about love, you know, all of it. And it's how we reveal the love that we are. It's always us. And we can get so scared and insecure that we stop that. We cover it up. We protect it. We're scared of feeling the pain. But when you see the pain is the most natural part of life as the joy, you live it. You live it, and it comes and it goes. So instead of narrowing and contracting and closing down the bandwidth of our experiences, we allow ourselves to fall in love with life. And when we come from that place, yes, it's coming from us, of course. It is us experiencing life the only way that we can experience it, from us, from the innate system that we are, this mind, consciousness and thought that we talk about, that are these three principles. But you know, when we're coming from that place, we're different. When we can go out there and we can smile and we can have kind words and be listening ears and care. You know, that caring kind of shines out of you because you're being love. That's what love would do. So we all have that potential. And even if you feel that you're not that, or you find it really hard to show up like that because you're so protective, life can turn around in a thought. And often that's how life does turn around. We look outside and we say, oh, life has changed because of these outside circumstances. But I guarantee you life has changed because you have. It's your insight, your thought that has changed. And that's, again, that potential is always there because there isn't a set person. We talked about this last week. There's thought creating the reality of a you that is always changing. And sometimes that thought is helpful and sometimes it's unhelpful, but it's just all the same thing. And we have infinitely different states of being, all of us at different times. But what if we can see the world through loving eyes? What if we can look with love? Now, that, again, I say this a lot, but it's so important. That doesn't mean to say we don't see injustices and things we want to change and take action. Of course we do. But we're doing it when we understand this from a place of knowing who we really are. It's not coming because we have to secure it the self, because the self is always going to be insecure. It comes because we see that how we would love the world to be, and that we want to be a part of that change we would love to see in the world. Yeah, that's the love. That's what we're talking about when, like, fall in love with your life. The other thing that's really beautiful about this is it's not falling in love with life because you've got $10 million or a lovely house or a pool or, the hottest girlfriend in the world, the hottest guy, whatever. They're all great, whatever. It's in the simplicity. It's falling in love with a tree, which I've spoken about recently. It's falling in love with a sunset. It's that falling in love with life itself, with humanity, with looking, and we can be so hard on humanity. But as a whole, it's a beautiful thing. It's just, in my opinion, in many ways lost its way because it doesn't understand what we're talking about here. So again, it's the fall in love with cooking a meal, fall in love with just the, getting in bed and just being like, oh, that feels good. Life doesn't have to be big. Great, it can be. I've got no problem with that. When we can fall in love with the simplicity, with the smallest thing in nature, with the caring words from another person, with whatever it may be, then it's like, wow, where do we go from there? That's like we've got a whole world to fall in love with then. Because we're not using our minds to narrow it down into some small bandwidth of, I only want to fall in love with A, B, and C. And if it's not that, I'm not going to love. It's like, no, take your blinkers off. Love it all. Even if you don't love it, great, I don't love that, fine. I love that I don't love it. It's everything. That's the totality of experience. And that's actually the truth of experience when we fall out of the personal thought. The truth of experience is this. If I could wave a magic wand, drop you all out of your thinking, get you to all settle down into the space before thought, just to hit that space of peace, that space of oneness, that space of our shared being, the mind settles, and in that settling, there's just love. There's just presence. There's just being. Everything that you could want, just there. Nothing's missing. It's only the intellect and the mind that will tell you that things are missing, that you're incomplete. My mind still does this, of course. I've had some times recently where it's felt like I felt incomplete because a certain person isn't in my life so much anymore, but I know it's not true. I know it's just allowing me to reflect and go inwards and see that fundamentally isn't true, and that I have everything that I need within me. It's just another wave in the journey of life. It's another wave on the ocean of my experience. And that wave comes back into the ocean and it becomes part of the oneness. And then another wave of experience will come. That's what we are. It's all so transient. We get so serious about it all. We get so caught up in our ideas about wanting things to be the same, resisting change, wanting what we think we want. There's a great quote, what you think you want isn't what you really want. I love that because it always makes me laugh because I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. What I think I want isn't actually what I really want. If I were to explore that quote in the sense of what I teach and this understanding, it would be because of what I think I want is in the world. That isn't ever going to be what I want, because what I want is the feeling that I think it's going to give me, which is already who I am. Isn't that interesting? How we do that. You know, I still get caught with it's outside of me. This reality that we see is a false reality. It's made up. It's made up. You know it's made up. You can sense that. You can feel that when we talk about it. You know that you have these experiences of the world looking a certain way and then looking a completely different way without anything changes. It's because you're making it up. We all do. We always do it. And it's the most natural thing in the world. I guess the word that I haven't used is unconditional love. Unconditional love for the world and everything in it. That's the highest form of expression of who we really are. When I talk about that before thought, that touching the space of who we really are, that's it. You're not a fixed person. There isn't a fixed world, and there aren't other fixed people. Oh, that's such a relief to me, because I know that everything has the potential to change. It's like, oh, okay. And remember that, you know, as we talk about here, we always come back to thought. Thought is creating the experience, and your moods that go hand in hand with thought will distort that thinking. A low mood will bring a low world. A high mood will bring a high world. So underneath that is just love. Underneath that is our potential. Underneath that is everything that we're looking for. Just before all of that personal thinking that we believe and we get so caught up in. When I remember, it's like, oh God, I'm so lucky. I get to remember this. I get to forget and remember and forget and remember. But my life is so much richer and more peaceful knowing this. Knowing that life only ever works one way. Even though I forget about it time and time again, I come back to knowing that life only works one way, inside to out. Knowing that it's all coming from me doesn't stop me loving life in the sense of, so I'm not sitting watching the sunset and thinking, well, this isn't real, this is coming from me and my thinking. I'm really loving the sunset. So it doesn't diminish the experience, it enriches it. So I can often work with clients and at first I can say, but if it's all thought, then, you know, what's the point of any of it? Well, the meaning of life is to live. The point of life is to be here and be human and experience all of the richness that's there for us to experience, and not dull it down by saying it's only thought. It's not it's only thought. It's like, oh my God, it's thought. And look at the experiences that it's giving me. Look what I get to see as this human being on this planet at this time. That's it. And knowing where to look when we are distressed, when we are upset. Knowing that we have to come home. The home that's within us. Knowing that it's not the past, it's not the future, it's not your friends, it's not your relationship. It's us. And that, again, that doesn't mean to say if any of those things need dealing with in your life. Of course you will deal with them. Obviously we need to have boundaries, but it's still incredibly helpful knowing that the experience is still coming from us, because it will then contain a lot less suffering. Such an interesting topic, this falling in love with life, because it's more the less of me around, the more in love with life I am. The more I'm applying my concepts, my beliefs, my ideas and my ego to the world, the less in love with life I am. So actually loving life is more the absence of the self, than in the sense of, like, when you're really in it and you're really loving it, you're probably not overthinking yourself. You're not thinking about your problems. You've got a lot less of you on your mind. So when I'm really in it and loving life, there isn't a lot of me on my mind. So that's it. And everyone's going in the wrong direction. They want to love life. They're trying to manipulate the happiness and the loving life by acquiring more, by going into the world of form and using that to get what they want and thinking that's going to give them the feeling. And it's not there. It's an illusion. Hopefully will be a point with those people where it's suddenly realised that, oh, it isn't out here. Let's go within. Let's try a different exploration. That, I think, happens to a lot of people. I don't think it happens to everyone, but I think for a lot it gets to that point where, hey, I've been doing this for a long time and I still do not feel fulfilled. So what's going on here? People with self-awareness and inquisitive mind will often begin to look in this direction. And I think that's my hope for everybody, that they do come across something like this. And I think that's why Gem and I started this. The more people that we can touch with this understanding, the better. The more people we get to wake up and fall in love with life as it is, and stop driving themselves crazy that it's in something else or someone else or a future, or, oh no, it has its potential right now, always, no matter what. It has its potential right now. So I'm going to hand over to see if Jem has anything to add. If not, maybe Muggsy, if Jem's not there.
I was too busy reminiscing and listening to your words. Yeah, how beautiful most of the things that you're saying. Relatable everything is. And I'm sure that everybody in this room, or anybody that's going to be listening to this on your podcast, are going to feel the same way. We go through life with so many goals because we're taught to have goals. And then as life's journey goes through, nothing seems to be enough, as you say. You build one thing and then you accomplish that, and then you say to yourself, what next? Or you continue through this process over and over, and it's ingrained into your life, into the way of living. And so is that living, or are we just living for these goals? And I think it's always a challenge to figure out what happiness is for yourself. And the thing that for me is you get caught, and it's never enough, like you said. And some of these things that you're bringing up ties into the past conversations we've had on these spaces. And when do you learn to just say that I'm good? I'm good with the family I have. I'm good with the accomplishments that I have, and start to deal with things in that sense. And before I pass it back on to you or anybody else. And for a simple example, a lot of you guys know that I've had surgery on my ankle for now going on the 5th month, and I finally just started walking again. And during the 4.5 months of not walking, it's been a mental challenge, because the simplest things in life of walking, eating, listening, hearing, being able to brush your teeth and taking a shower or whatever it is, we all forget that these simple things we take for granted, it's taken away. It does make you at least realize certain things of life that's a lot more important than some of the goals. I feel like a lot of goals that we do set for ourselves Is it for us? Is it for the ego? Is it for the people around you? Is it to, you're always challenging others? It's not even just about it. It's no longer about challenging yourself. You are competing with the people that are around you. If it's business, if it's what have you, you're constantly competing to be better. And then at the end of the day, you're just, what are we doing? We're going in circle and circle and circle. And then,
Yeah, great points. And see, I wouldn't say don't have goals. I'd just say that we would handle them differently. It's not that we wouldn't have a goal. Absolutely have a goal. Have as many as you want, but there would be a lot less attachment to them once you understand who you are. The ego wouldn't quite have as much hold of them as it would when you don't understand who you are. The ego gets to, when we have a goal and the ego holds it, it becomes competitive. It becomes something you're not going to be okay unless you reach it. You feel limited and lacking unless you get there, because the goal will then contain insecurity and fear, because the ego is by its very nature is insecure. So the difference between having a goal in that way and then having a goal when you understand more deeply who you are is the goal just becomes something that you play with. It becomes something like, oh, okay, I'm going to play with this in life. I'm going to see where this takes me. And actually you become much more in flow. That goal, I'm going towards that. And suddenly there may be a change of direction. And in that change of direction, you go with it. You don't resist the change because suddenly it's not where you want to go, because you start to understand that life has its flow and it will go in the direction that it's meant to. It's really interesting because I do honestly believe that there's two completely different ways of being once you understand what we're talking about here. There's the understanding of being kind of insight and knowing more of who you are, which is very egotistical and driven by that insecurity. And then there's the way that comes out after. I'm just going to get a drink of water, so I'm going to let you take over.
I was going to say, can you get a drink of water, and can everyone hear me now? Hopefully. Fantastic. Yeah, I missed a few parts, but the main thing that I was sort of taking from that is I didn't realize how much of a sort of victim of my own thinking and of the world that I was before. I really thought I was a positive person. I was, obsessed with the law of attraction, reading all these books and just chasing happiness and thinking, oh, I've read that book and I've done that course, and it really is very, very exhausting. But now it's like I know that life is happening for me, not to me. I was very afraid of the world and it was quite a scary place before, whereas now it's exciting and it's great to be vulnerable, because I know that anything that happens is supposed to, and it's for me to grow and for me to learn. So I don't even see anything as good or bad, sometimes, but the majority of the time is just neutral. And if I start feeling a certain way about it, that's because I've given it the energy. I didn't even think that possibility existed, before all of this. It was just like, well, I don't like that because that happened to me years ago, and that person did that. And it's always an excuse. I've had to take a lot of responsibility, especially over the last couple of months. And Miles, I think you'll agree that I was always making an excuse for something. There was always a reason why. And that reason was because whether I was scared or lazy or whatever. But if you really want to do something, you'll always do it. And there will be an excuse for everything. But there's nothing to be afraid of. And Miles and I have had so many. This week we've laughed, I think, probably more than we've ever laughed. And nothing in particular has happened, but everything just feels so light and so loving. And we're having conversations about some quite serious things, and we just can't stop laughing because nothing matters. And it's so beautiful and uplifting. And you can see the love in everything. And even some things that you think, God, how can you appreciate that? Well, because I am that. And it's hitting me really deeply when I think about it, because how can we be separate from anything? That's what I believe true love is. And before, I had no idea what love is. So I think I'm on the right path because it feels right. And I hope you're okay, Miles, and you've got your water.
Yeah, I think I'm okay now, but that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
really lovely. Yeah. Yeah, that was great. I see that we have Chef Jay that would like to speak. So if you'd like to come up, that would be wonderful.
Hey, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I love this conversation and felt compelled to speak because something you said seemed so simple and obvious, but really struck a chord, particularly where you mentioned about, it's not the material things that bring us the joy, the happiness, the pleasure. It's the feeling that we get, and then seeking those things. We're not seeking the things, we're seeking what they bring for us, and it already exists within us. And it made me think about, so I have a friend who, I was hanging out with a few friends last night, and this friend of mine says, there's somebody I want to introduce you to. I think and she knows me very, very well. She's like, I really want to introduce you to this person. You two are great people. I think you'd get along really well. You can't force a connection, but I just really want you two to meet. And so and the way she described her to me kind of got me very like excited and feeling, I don't know, like peaceful and hopeful and a little bit different. And it made me realize, like, all of this already exists inside of me. And I got out of a relationship earlier in the year, like beginning of January. And after that, I was like, I'm not seeking out anybody. I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to process everything I feel. If I feel upset, sad, longing, frustrated, just be with whatever emotion it is. And when I'm ready, I'm ready. When it happens, it happens. And 7-8 months went by, and here we are today. And I start to think, like, have these moments where I'm like, am I ready? Am I emotionally available? Do I want to put myself out there? And so it becomes this whole conflicting thing, and it all happens inside of my head. It's all this story that I essentially tell myself. And, it's interesting. Like, I don't know why it clicked so much, but particularly about just knowing that all the happiness is here. Everything I'm going to feel is here. And it's not, I already know that it's not going to come from someone else or something else that's going to bring me the gratitude. It's not about the money or the things or the experience even. It's my reaction to it and my response to it. Like you said, fall in love with a tree, really admire it and appreciate it. And so I just want to say I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that gentle reminder. And I want to put that at the forefront of my mind and just give my dog a little extra love today and admire the plants on my patio and just be in that state of gratitude. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Moles, everything you've said today is just, it's so beautiful. I mean, it's like there's so many little reminders that we always have to just tell ourselves. It's like, and part of the things that you were saying today about everything is so fleeting. It's so temporary. Feelings are so temporary, and experiences are so temporary, and we just get so used to either happiness or sad, and sometimes you just get lost in between, right? So does that make sense? Like there's this happiness and then there's this sad, and then what's in between is always interesting part of the journey.
Yeah, I guess it's all being. This is what we come back to with this understanding. Everything is the state of being, and from that being will come those feelings. So I guess what we're pointing to here is the beingness rather than the feelingness, because also we don't have to take all those feelings so seriously. We can get very, very caught up and self-indulgent in our own feelings, and from time to time that's absolutely fine. But often it's not helpful. When we see feelings from this understanding, they're just an experience that's come to be seen, come to come, they come to go, they ebb and flow, and we can just allow it. And yes, of course, there's the nothingness and there's the intense feelings and the light feelings. They're all there to be had. They're all there to be felt. But I think a lot of what's happened in the world that we're in is people have become so hooked on their own feelings that it's taken them in a way into the ego more than out of it. And we're always pointing the direction away from the ego, away from what the mind is saying, and into more of the truth of who we are. And minds are helpful, don't get me wrong. Minds are incredibly helpful, but they're also incredibly unhelpful at certain times in certain ways. So this is where we get to explore. And Chef Jay, thank you so much for coming up and speaking and saying what you said, because that's so helpful for everybody else to hear. Because, you know, for you, it did look like, oh, okay, it's, you know, I'm not ready for this. I've gone through this, I've gone through that. And suddenly you've seen the seeking within yourself, and how that we can also shut down, and how actually everything's always you. There's nothing else in the room but us. And no matter what it looks like, those feelings are always us. They're always coming from us. And that's such an important thing. And what's interesting that I haven't actually said, and I'm not sure if I've said it on any call, but it always fascinated me, because I was like, well, why does it really look like that thing has given me happiness then? I got that, and I did feel happy. It was very temporary, but for that moment, I felt happy. So tell me what that was. And in my exploration, what I came to find was that that's because we've temporarily stopped seeking. It wasn't the thing giving us happiness. We've made up a load of shit about that thing giving us happiness, which probably added to it. But actually, it's the relief of temporarily not looking outside of ourselves for that thing to give us happiness, because we've now got it. We can relax and open up. And in that expansion, what happens is this natural, innate happiness and all the good feelings come through. And we then project that back out onto the thing, saying, oh, of course it's that. And then suddenly that happiness wanes, and we're going, well, it's not that thing anymore. What do I need now to make me happy? And the cycle continues. You see people doing that with material goods. You see people doing that in relationships. See, this is what I love about this, is that, you know, I'm not in a relationship right now, but I know if I was with somebody and they understood this, like, wow, what a good chance you've got of having an amazing relationship. And I know couples in the Three Principles world that understand the understanding, and they have these amazing relationships because you're not doing that projecting all the time. From time to time, you're going to get caught in thought. You will. You know, nobody sees this 100% of the time. I say every week, I dip in and out of, you know, seeing it's me, thinking it's the world, seeing it's me, thinking it's the world. But the potential in our lives for love, you know, be that love of life, romantic love, is huge. It becomes greater when we see who we are. You know, we dumb it down, we shrink it by projecting it onto the outside world. It's peace and happiness is what we all long for, and it's who we are, always. Now, whatever challenges you're going through, whatever life looks like, underneath that, you are still peace and happiness. The challenges present us with the opportunity to explore more of who we are. So, yeah, if you're feeling lack, if you're feeling limited, that's your ego, that's your contraction. If you're feeling expansive, if you're feeling loving, if you're feeling peaceful, there's less of you, there's more of love.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because it's almost like we're sort of born with amnesia, and we're just here to remember. That's what it feels like sometimes. When I've remembered and realised that everything is transient, everything is temporary, the things that were shitty have disappeared, or they're disappearing, because I'm not holding on to them. I'm not fixed in that thinking. And it's like, if you look at your life, most things are probably pretty good. And if there's a couple of things that aren't, probably our thinking around them is not that great, because we either think we're stuck or we can't get out of it, or, you know, it might be something that's been there for a long time, and because it's been there for a long time, we think it's going to be hard to get rid of. So we're just adding more and more and more thought. So for me, it's just, I used to overcomplicate, overanalyze, overthink everything. I used to think, well, I've always thought everything was connected, but I thought that it was things that I was doing were creating things. But now there's none of that. There's none of that heavy, messy sort of thinking. It's just everything is as it is, and that's how it's supposed to be. So the things that were tricky or I was struggling with, that is because I was holding on to something that didn't even exist, and it kept showing up all around. And it's really, really nice to know that that was the main problem for me.
Yeah. Well, it's always us.
Yeah, I know, it's bloody annoying because, yeah, there's not very many of the conversations now, but the amount of times where I've said, oh, call Sam, and I'll say, bloody hell, yeah, it's you. It's all thought. And now a lot of the time I don't even get to send the text message because I'm like, she's just going to say, you're a twat, you're in your head. And so but that's brilliant. It's so helpful when you understand it yourself, you can sort of explain it to other people. And when they see it as well, it's the most amazing thing, because I was really trapped in my mind for a long time, and I never thought this was possible because I didn't believe it was possible for me. I thought everyone else that was really, really happy were pretending. I thought, this can't be real. But I knew that there was something more, and there was something wrong, because I knew I shouldn't have been feeling the way I was. And there was really nothing to do, just to relax and just be. And that's the simplicity of it, which is really, really great.
Yeah, it's freedom. I love it when working I love doing groups, working one-to-one with people, when you see their face, when you see the change, because people don't realise how caught up and how much they live in their heads. Even if they think they live in their heads, they're stunned when I work with someone and you actually start pointing out the thinking, and you go on the journey with them, and it's like, well, have you explored that? May not be true, and then suddenly they get that light bulb moment, and it's like, fuck, that was thought too. And I'm like, it really is all thought, and it's a revelation. Again, it's that going from one life to another. It is literally like a rebirth. It's seeing a life in such a different way than how you'd previously seen it, that it just changes everything. And then, as you go through the weeks with them, it's like, oh my God, that happened and I saw it. I'm like, amazing. Because it really does have real world implications, because you're detaching from everything that looked like it was creating your feelings, and you're living in a healthier, happier, more joyous way. And again, like Jem said, oh, I don't get dark thinking. I'd say I probably still do, but I don't take it as seriously. For me, I still can get some heavy thinking. I'm not in control of thought. Thought comes and goes, but it doesn't grab in the same way. And that's probably what Jem meant. It just doesn't catch in the same way. I'm not scared of my own thinking anymore. I see, back to what Muggsy said, the transient nature of my thinking and the transient nature of experience. And that's what, how much simpler is it when we see that we're only up against our own thinking? If we're not loving life, it's us. Great, I can do something about that. I can begin to explore who I am. I can read more, listen more, work with somebody, explore who I am to change my experience. Because it really is an inside job. What's that saying? Yeah, the only way out is in. God, that's so true. What's fascinating, and and I've been teaching this for a long time now. What still blows my mind is when I work with one person in a family or one person in their life, and they have all these other people in their life that look like they're the problem. And that person does the work, and at a certain point down the line, they start to wake up, and they have their kind of awakening, and they start to see it differently. And then suddenly you'll get on a call and you'll say, my child is really different. They're behaving so much better, and my partner is different, or that person that I had conflict at work with, we've cleared it all, we've sorted it all out. It still blows my mind that you work with one person and people around them also change. And I've seen it too many times for it not to be true, because I've seen it over and over again. It's just like, wow. It just shows that the world really is a reflection of us. And anything that we want to change, don't go out there, go in first, then out there will begin to change. It's such a paradox, but it's so true. You want outside change, go inside. Otherwise, you're just trying to manipulate an illusion. So
I feel personally attacked with what you just said. I thought, oh God, because it's funny. Like I'm sat in my mum's house, and I've not really spent a long time with her, and it's just so interesting. Everything everything that I thought was a problem was me. And it's like, God, maybe I was the difficult one, but it doesn't matter now. And it's just, it is so, so incredible. So sorry to interrupt you and jump in there, but it really, really is. I thought, but it's the same with everybody. It's you will have seen it within me, you would have seen it within everyone. But I just feel really, really grateful, especially today. So thank you.
Are you in love with life, Jem, today?
I am in love with life. And what you just said about the dark thoughts, I do still have dark thoughts, but the thing is, I don't believe them anymore. So before, they seemed so real, and I was quite scared of life and myself and people. Whereas now, I can have exactly the same thought that I might have had a few years ago, but I don't believe it because I know it's bullshit. Whereas before, it was like, oh my God, that must be real. So it's like, I'm just living in my own delusion. It's fucking fantastic.
You just created a nicer delusion. That's all we're ever doing.
Absolutely. Everyone should be doing this.
Amazing. Oh, Mugsy, have you got anything to say here?
I don't know if I'm in love with life, but I have become very peaceful with my life. I don't know if it's any different. I've come to a lot of conclusions and just been so at peace, moles and gems. I mean, it's like, it's weird. It's it's cool. It's exciting, and I'm not trying to challenge things as much as I used to. And these conversations that you guys bring up, I love these spaces. I love the things that you guys talk about. You know, Jem, I mean, like, your stories about yourself are beautiful. Like, I don't know if you realize that, but you're always you like you're always trying to find yourself, and then you do, and then it's so cool. It's almost like watching a project. I I know that sounds really rude. Maybe that sounds rude, but it's like I'm so in love with listening to how you describe yourself and how you find yourself constantly here or there, and it's a beautiful thing. And Moles, like, I don't know, your wisdom, God, your words are like so touching all the time. I don't
Ah,
know.
thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's like, me and Miles had so many conversations about this, and I was sort of a bit held back in the beginning. And I was like, if anybody listens to any of the 40 odd hours, they're going to know I was an absolute lunatic before anyway. So I just think if you can be honest, wear your heart on your sleeve, explain your experiences, because if I can just help one person to not feel like I did, then that's all that really matters. And that's all I ever want to do. And I'm not embarrassed or ashamed or any of those things anymore, because none of that exists. So thank you, Muggsy. That means the world to me. Thank you very much.
No, you're a beautiful person. You really are. And I don't want to sit here and compliment each other, but it's true.
Yeah, you are, Gems. You're very special, darling. So take the compliment. And yeah, it is. It's everybody says it's like those little bits that you add are just perfect. You know, it brings the humanness to it. It brings the story to it. So it is really wonderful. And we're going to actually pre-record something which is going to be my story and Jem's story, and where we really talk about ourselves and how the principles have changed our lives and kind of how we were before. So I'm quite looking forward to doing that, and that will be released on the podcast. It won't be a Spaces. We will be releasing that in a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's been really lovely and really wonderful again. I love doing these. I love hanging out with you all and just seeing where it goes. I do have something to read, and then I will pass over to Jem. It's a writing by a gentleman called Albert Camus. My dear, in the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found that there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy. For it says, no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back.
That is beautiful. And I think it rounds everything off perfectly. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's joined us today, everyone who's listening on Apple or Spotify or Fountain. Please share and subscribe and rate us. It does really help us reach everybody. Mine and Miles' DMs are always open if you want to talk about anything. Obviously, I'd recommend if anyone wants to work one-to-one with Molly, just contact her because it works. I'm not going to blow too much smoke, but when you hear the episode that we're going to be releasing in a couple of weeks, you'll understand maybe a bit more as to how we got here and why. And I just want to say thank you. If you guys have any questions or any future subjects you want us to cover, please let us know because we want to serve the community. And we're always available. We'll be here the same time next week. And we love you very much. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Please share if you're listening to it on the podcast. And yeah, we really look forward to being with you all again next week. Let's spread the word that happiness is innate and see if we can change this world a little bit. Sending you all lots and lots of love and have a wonderful rest of your week.